I inherited the house by the lake on a cold, flat morning in late November. A morning so still it felt staged. The air was clean enough to sting the throat, and the sky hung low, a dull sheet of gray that seemed to press down on the world like an exhausted hand. It had rained the night before, and the gravel driveway glistened with thin beads of water as I stepped out of my car. Even before I reached the front door, the house felt wrong. It wasn't the house itself. It was the sensation of returning to somewhere you were never supposed to come back to. My Uncle Thomas had lived here for decades, alone, in a silence the rest of us didn't understand. My family rarely spoke about him. They said he preferred solitude. They said he had episodes. They said he was not the same after the accident. But no one ever explained what accident they meant. And now, he was gone. Dead by natural causes, the coroner had said. That phrase always struck me as absurd. There was nothing natural about the way he lived or the way he died alone in a house with boarded windows and every mirror covered in cloth. I didn't want anything from him, but he left me one thing in his will. To my nephew, the only one in this family who still sees the world clearly, I leave you the camera. Guard it or destroy it, but do not ignore it. The strange part wasn't the wording. It was that my uncle and I barely knew each other. I remember seeing him maybe 4 times in my childhood, always from a distance, as if he didn't want me to get too close. There was a sadness behind his eyes, a kind of tired fear, like he was running from something no one else could see. I pushed the door open. The air inside was colder than outside. The house smelled of dust.
Then shapes, silhouettes, candles, a coffin, a funeral, and lying inside the coffin was me. My chest tightened, and I stumbled backward, knocking into a table. The camera slipped from my hand, clattering loudly against the wood floor. I gasped for breath, hands shaking violently. "No," I whispered. "No, no, no, this isn't real." I stared at the photo again, hoping the image had changed into something, anything else. But the picture only grew clearer. The coffin, the flowers, the mourners in dark clothing, and my own face, pale and still. I felt like I was drowning in cold air. I grabbed the photo and tore it apart, ripping it down the middle. The insides were tacky and chemical, smearing across my fingers. But tearing it didn't stop the dread sinking into my bones. My uncle's final note echoed in my mind. Do not stand in front of it when it clicks on its own. I turned to the camera. It lay on its side, lens pointed toward the ceiling. Then, slowly, deliberately, the lens tilted downward, toward me. "How?" I whispered. Before I could move, click. Another photo slid out. My heart hammered so violently I felt it in my teeth. The image developed faster this time. My shaking hands lifted it unwillingly. Inside the frame was my reflection. Not a mirror reflection, but as if the picture had been taken from inches in front of my face. And behind me, a figure, tall, pale, leaning over my shoulder. I whipped around. Nothing. The room was empty. But the air was colder, heavier. I backed away from the camera, nearly tripping over a loose floorboard. My mind raced. I needed to leave. I needed air. I needed to get away from this cursed thing. I grabbed my bag, stuffed the camera case inside without looking at it, and ran out the front door. I didn't care about the rest of the house. I didn't care about the inheritance. My uncle could keep his demons. But as I unlocked my car, something made me freeze. Another Polaroid was tucked under the windshield wiper. I pulled it out with trembling fingers. The photo showed my car, parked exactly where it was now, except in the picture, the driver's side window was shattered, and blood, my blood, streaked across the inside of the glass. I dropped it. My pulse roared in my ears. Something was coming. Something the camera already knew. Something that had chosen me. I got into the car, slammed the door, and sped down the dirt road without looking back. My vision blurred with panic, but I didn't care. I just needed distance. But as I drove, a cold realization crept in. Even if I escaped the house,
I didn't sleep the first night. I couldn't. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the coffin, the candles, the flowers, my own unmoving face. The Polaroid of my funeral played in my mind like a looped nightmare, and no amount of exhaustion could weaken its grip. I sat on the edge of my bed, lights on, back against the wall. Dawn crept slowly through the window blinds, casting pale stripes across the floor. I expected the morning light to make me feel safer. It didn't. Nothing felt safe. Not since the camera clicked by itself. Not since it took a picture of something standing behind me. Not since it predicted blood on the inside of my car window. I kept glancing at the duffel bag on the floor, the bag that held the Polaroid in its cracked leather case. Every few minutes, I swore I heard sounds from inside it. The faintest mechanical whir, the suggestion of a click. A nightmare whisper telling me that even zipped, even hidden, even ignored, the camera wasn't done. The sun rose with a dull, indifferent glow. I told myself that maybe the photos were metaphorical. Maybe the funeral image wasn't literal. Maybe the blood on the window was symbolic. Maybe I was losing my mind. But deep down, I already knew the truth. The camera wasn't predicting things. It was recording what was already decided. The police report. By mid-morning, panic had settled into something colder. Not calmer, just numb. I needed answers. I needed context. I needed to know what had actually happened to my uncle. I drove to the town where he'd lived, 3 hours north, a place so small it barely had a postal code. As I pulled into the local sheriff's station, I realized something unsettling. The town looked half abandoned. Shops closed, windows boarded, streets empty. It felt more like a place that had survived a disaster than one hosting everyday life. Inside the station, a tired-looking deputy sat behind a scratched counter, sipping coffee from a mug that read, "World's okayest cop." He didn't look up when I entered. I cleared my throat. "Excuse me? I'm here about my uncle, Thomas Graves." The deputy froze mid-sip. Slowly, he put the mug down. "Graves," he repeated. "Your family?" "Yes, I inherited his house. I need to understand what happened to him." The deputy's eyes darted toward a door behind him, the kind of glance someone gives when debating whether to let a secret stay buried. Eventually, he sighed, stood up, and motioned for me to follow. Inside a cramped office, he closed the door and sat. What I'm about to tell you isn't official record. Most of it didn't end up in the report. Folks here didn't want it written down. My heartbeat quickened. Just tell me. He rubbed his temples. Your uncle wasn't crazy. Everybody thought he was, but he wasn't. He was scared, and he had good reason to be. He opened a drawer and pulled out a thing folder, the supposed official report. It was almost empty. A single page. One paragraph. Natural causes. He tapped it. Bullshit. What actually happened? I asked. The deputy leaned back and
The deputy's jaw flexed. Now that's the strangest part. The camera was sitting on a table. Nobody touched it. Nobody got within 6 feet of it. Why not? He swallowed. Because it was still warm. Every word felt like a nail driven deeper into my skull. I forced myself to ask the last question. How did you know it was warm? He stared at me, eyes dark. Because when we arrived, it had just taken a picture. He opened a cabinet and withdrew a sealed evidence bag. Inside was a faded Polaroid. He slid it across the desk. Your uncle died alone in that house, he murmured, so this picture shouldn't exist. I lifted the bag. My hands trembled. The photo showed the living room where my uncle had died, taken from a corner near the ceiling, as if captured by a camera floating midair. The room was empty, except for a shadow. A human-shaped shadow, 10 feet tall, twisted, slender, wrong. It loomed over a spot on the floor. And that spot, that was where my uncle's body had been found. The deputy whispered, "We think the camera didn't just take the picture. We think it recorded what was there." I dropped the bag, heart hammering. The deputy lowered his voice. "If you inherited that thing, son, get rid of it. Burn the house down if you have to, but don't use it. Don't let it take anything." The room felt unbearably small. "Why didn't you destroy it yourselves?" I asked. He stared at me with a haunted expression. "Because everyone who tried died within a week." 2. The camera in the bag. The drive back home felt twice as long. My phone buzzed constantly. Unknown numbers, no voicemails. I didn't answer any of them. I couldn't. Every mile closer to home made the pit in my stomach grow heavier. When I finally walked into my living room, my eyes went instantly to the duffel bag. It had moved. I had left it beside the couch. Now it was sitting upright in the middle of the room. I froze. Silence pressed on me like a weight. The air was thick, electric, humming with subtle vibration. Shadows pooled unnaturally near the corners, stretching longer than the furniture should have allowed. "Hello?" My voice cracked. Nothing. I approached the bag slowly, each step tightening a knot inside my chest. When I reached it, I noticed something that made my skin crawl. A Polaroid was sticking halfway out of the zipper. I hadn't taken any pictures. Hands shaking, I unzipped the bag. Inside, the camera sat upright, positioned like it had been placed carefully, deliberately. And beneath it, multiple fresh Polaroids, each face down, as if waiting, as if they wanted to be discovered. "No," I whispered. "No, no, no."
I reached into the bag with the tips of my fingers and pulled out the photos. There were 6. I laid them on the coffee table. For a moment, I didn't flip them. I just stared. The room felt colder. The air tasted metallic, like blood on the back of my tongue. The dim lamp flickered a few times, and something in the hallway creaked, slow and deliberate, as if under a shifting weight. I flipped the first photo. Photo 1. A picture of my front door, taken from inside the house. At 3 a.m., according to the timestamp, scratched into the bottom. Not printed, scratched, like by a fingernail. Someone, or something, had stood inside my house last night, watching the door, waiting. My breath quickened. I flipped the second photo. Photo 2. My bedroom, taken from the foot of the bed. I was sleeping in the picture. A blurred shape leaned over me.
Not quite human. Arms too long. Head tilted at a painful angle. Fingers hovering inches above my throat. I tasted bile. Photo 3. Photo 4. Photo 5. Each worse. My backyard, my hallway, my basement door open when it should have been locked. Every photo taken from impossible angles, high, low, corners with no vantage point, like the photographer wasn't bound to the floor or walls. And always, somewhere in the frame, the figure, watching me, waiting. My fingers hovered over the last photo. A dread, unlike anything I had ever felt, pooled in the deepest part of me. "Don't," I whispered to myself, but I flipped it. Photo 6. My living room. Right now. Same lighting, same angle, same coffee table. And in the center of the room, in the exact spot where I was standing, a tall, black shape towered behind me. Its hand was inches from my neck. My body locked. Every instinct screamed at once. Don't turn around. Don't move. Don't breathe. The air behind me shifted. Something rose upward, stretching tall like unfolding limbs or unfurling shadows. The temperature dropped so fast my breath fogged. Very slowly, because I had no other choice, I turned. There was nothing. The room was empty. But the cold remained. And deep inside the duffel bag, the Polaroid camera clicked. By itself. I fell backwards, scrambling, knocking into the table. The camera whirred, spit out another photo, and fell silent. I stared at it, lying on the floor. A single, fresh Polaroid protruding from its mouth. I didn't want to touch it, but I knew I had to. My fingers barely brushed the edge of the picture. Slowly, trembling, I lifted it. The image developed instantly, as if it didn't need time, as if it had been waiting. It showed me, lying on my living room floor, neck bent, eyes open, body twisted wrong, blood trailing from my mouth. And behind the body, the figure, its long hand resting gently on the back of my neck. My legs nearly collapsed. I gripped the sofa to stay upright.
The camera wasn't predicting random snapshots. It was documenting my death, frame by frame, and the photos were getting closer and closer and closer to now. 3. The countdown. I checked the timestamp on the final photo. It wasn't a time, it was a number. It said 3. My breath caught. I grabbed the previous photo.
The corner of it was marked 2. 4. I scrambled through the others. 5. 6. Each photo was counting down. There were only 3 numbers left. 3, 2, 1. And then, presumably, the last Polaroid would be my final moment, my last breath. My uncle's note wasn't a warning, it was the destination. The countdown had already begun. I staggered backward and hit the wall. My vision tunneled. 3 photos left, 3 exposures, 3 guaranteed moments before the end. Unless I could break the rules, unless I could stop the camera from taking the final picture. My uncle's note pulsed in my memory. If the photo shows your death, you cannot change it. You can only prepare for it. No, I refused. I wouldn't accept that. Not yet. The camera clicked again, inside the bag. As if it heard my thoughts. As if it disagreed. I lunged toward the bag and ripped it open. The camera lay motionless, waiting. A new photo slid out. Number 2. My hands shook so violently, the picture fluttered to the floor. The image showed me sitting on the couch, my body language frantic, terrified, exactly as I look now. And behind me, the figure, closer. Hand raised, almost touching. My throat tightened into a knot. Time was running out. I had one option left. I had to confront the camera, destroy it, break it, crush it, burn it, something, anything. I reached down and grabbed it. The plastic felt colder than bone. I lifted it over my head and slammed it against the floor. The camera cracked in half, or should have cracked. Instead, the moment it hit the hardwood, a blinding flash erupted. A reflexive shutter click echoed through the room louder than before. An undeveloped Polaroid slid out of the broken shell. Number 1. My breathing turned to wild, frantic gasps. This was it. If 1 was here, then 0 was next. My death photo, my final moment, the last thing the camera would ever record. Hands trembling violently, I picked up the number 1 photo. The image resolved instantly, too fast to be natural. It showed exactly what I was doing now, standing in my living room, holding the camera, staring in horror. And behind me, the figure, one hand almost touching my shoulder, the other reaching forward for the shutter. It was about to take the final picture, the 0. I dropped the photo and spun around, just in time to hear click. A flash detonated behind my eyes. White drowned everything, then black.
When the flash went off,
It didn't feel like light. It felt like impact, like a blunt force shattering through my skull, like my mind had been ripped from my body and hurled through static. Every nerve screamed, every part of me burned white, and then drowned in pitch black. For a few seconds, or minutes or hours, time didn't exist, I wasn't anywhere. I was floating or falling. Inside the darkness, faint shapes flickered, negative image silhouettes, limbs stretching like liquid shadow. The tall figure from the photos stood among them, only now it wasn't blurry or distant. It was close. Close enough to touch. Close enough to see details I wished I never could. Its skin wasn't skin. Its face wasn't a face. It was a living void, the absence shaped into a humanoid parody. It leaned in, not with breath, because there was none, but with presence, a gravitational pressure collapsing the air around me. Then a sound tore through the void. Shh. Shh. The static of a Polaroid developing. The world snapped back. The zero photo. I hit the floor hard, my jaw slamming against wood, ribs cracking with the force. Air burst from my lungs. I clawed toward consciousness as reality sharpened around me. The living room, the torn open duffel bag, and the broken Polaroid camera lying in two halves. And in front of me, a new photograph. Still warm, still wet from development chemicals. The zero, the final picture. I hesitated only a moment before picking it up. I shouldn't have. The image was me. Dead. My body lay twisted on the living room floor. The angle of my neck was impossible, snapped like a broken hinge. A smear of blood marked the baseboard where my head had struck. In the background stood the figure, its hand resting gently on the back of my skull. But the worst part? The timestamp. Not scratched like before, printed. Perfectly printed. A timestamp 5 minutes in the future. I checked the clock on the wall. I had exactly 4 minutes and 58 seconds left. The world narrowed into a single icy point. Not a prophecy, not a warning, a schedule. I scrambled back, gripping the photo like it might bite me. No, I choked out. No, no, no! The camera halves on the floor vibrated, just slightly. Then, a shadow in the corner shifted. Something tall and slender rose behind the couch. Not solid at first, like darkness gathering itself, filling a shape it had worn 1,000 times. Its head scraped the ceiling, its long fingers stretched downwards, joints bending in angles not meant for human anatomy. The creature stepped forward. I ran. 2. The door that wouldn't open. I sprinted toward the front door. My fingers closed around the deadbolt. I twisted. It didn't move. I twisted harder. Nothing. The lock wasn't jammed. It was frozen, as if welded into place. Behind me, the floor groaned under the creature's weight. I slammed my shoulder into the door. It didn't even rattle. I grabbed a dining chair and smashed it against the window.
The camera was winding itself, preparing another shot, preparing something I hadn't seen yet. My legs trembled. The creature stepped into the center of the room. Its silhouette swallowed what little light remained. I staggered backward, slipping on the hardwood. 3 minutes left. I had to survive 3 minutes. Somehow. 3. The basement. The only door still openable was the basement. A terrible choice, but the only one. I bolted down the creaking steps, slamming the basement door shut behind me. Darkness swallowed me instantly. As my eyes adjusted, my stomach turned. The basement wasn't empty. My uncle's belongings were stacked everywhere. Boxes, old newspapers, broken appliances, rusted tools. But something else filled the space. Polaroids. Hundreds. Thousands. Pinned to the walls, scattered across the floor, hanging from nails and wires like macabre decorations. All showing me. Different versions of me. Sleeping, eating, walking, driving, talking on the phone, sitting at work. These images weren't from the last few days. They spanned years. The camera had been photographing me long before I ever saw it. Long before my uncle died. Long before I even knew it existed. Something inside my ribcage felt like it broke. Tears blurred my vision. Why me? Why had it chosen me? The temperature plunged. The darkness thickened. And then, footsteps overhead. Slow, heavy, deliberate. I backed deeper into the basement. The camera clicked from the top of the stairs. A fresh photo slid underneath the basement door. I crawled toward it despite every instinct screaming no. I flipped it over. The picture showed the basement right now. And in the corner, behind the boiler, barely visible, two white shapes. Eyes watching me. My pulse exploded. Something exhaled behind me. I spun around, and the basement lights flickered on. Every bulb humming, trembling, almost bursting, and in the sudden brightness, I finally saw the thing clearly. 4. The thing behind the boiler. It wasn't human. It wasn't pretending to be. Its body was impossibly thin, like a shadow given bones. Its limbs ended in long, delicate fingers that scraped the floor. Its face, if you could call it a face, was smooth except for those two pale, reflective slits where eyes might have been. It unfolded itself from the corner like an insect emerging from a shell. And when it stood to full height, its head brushed the basement ceiling. The creature tilted its head at me, slow, curious, as if examining something fragile, something already broken. My legs backed up on their own until I hit a wall of Polaroids.
Under my palm, the creature stepped closer, towering over me. There was no malice in the way it moved, no rage. It didn't hate me. It simply needed me. The camera clicked again upstairs. 2 minutes left. I grabbed the closest object I could, a rusted hammer lying on the floor, and swung. The hammer passed through the creature like smoke. Its form rippled like disturbed water, then solidified again. It didn't react, not even annoyed. It simply kept moving toward me, like everything I did was inconsequential, like the photo had already decided the end. 5. The plan that shouldn't work. If the camera couldn't be destroyed, if the creature couldn't be touched, if the house was sealed, then there was only one thing left. Change the photo. Change the future. Force a different outcome. The idea was insane, stupid, desperate. But desperation was all I had. I sprinted toward the basement stairs. The creature lunged, but not fast enough. I reached the door and slammed into it. Locked. I pounded with both fists. Open! Footsteps above me. Not the creature's.
The camera's dragging itself across the floor, positioning, readying, preparing the final shot. The death photo had already been taken. But what if? What if I could make the camera take another? What if a new photo could overwrite the first? I needed the camera right now, or I was already dead. I threw myself against the basement door again. It didn't budge. The creature's hand curled around the bottom step, pulling itself upward like a predatory spider. I backed up, grabbed a metal toolbox, and hurled it into the ceiling. The impact shook the room. Dust poured down, but the door stayed locked. 30 seconds left. I was going to die in a basement. Or worse, something was going to take me. A memory flashed. The deputy's words. It doesn't want to kill you. It wants to record you. The camera wanted the final exposure, wanted the perfect angle, the perfect moment, the perfect death. So I forced myself to do the unthinkable. I stopped running. I stood still, in the center of the basement, under the single dangling light bulb, fully visible. Target acquired. Upstairs, the camera clicked loudly, a greedy mechanical inhale. The basement door unlocked, softly, quietly, like an invitation. I walked up the stairs. Every muscle in my body trembled. I pushed the door open and stepped into the living room. 6. The final moment. The camera floated 3 feet above the floor, levitating, turning toward me like an eye adjusting. It hovered, waiting.
The creature emerged behind me, its presence warping the air, bending the shadows, making the walls bow inward. But I didn't look back. I stepped closer to the camera, 1 foot at a time, breathing steady. If the camera needed the perfect death shot, I would give it something it didn't expect. A different picture, a different moment, a different future. I lunged for the camera. The world froze. The creature roared, a sound like collapsing buildings and reversing film reels. The flash detonated. Time shattered. 7. The photo that wasn't possible. When my senses returned, I was on the floor, alive, barely. Smoke curled from the camera, now in my hand, melted, ruined, dead, for real this time. I blinked through the haze. A single Polaroid lay on my chest. The new 0. My hands shook violently as I lifted it and stared. The image wasn't me dying. It wasn't me at all. It was the creature. Its face twisted, shrieking, reaching, breaking apart in the flash. Captured, frozen, trapped. The flash hadn't taken my soul. It had taken its. The creature was gone. The house was silent. The Polaroid camera gave one final mechanical whine, then died completely. The photo in my hand turned black, then blank, wiped clean. The future had reset. 8. Aftermath. I didn't stay in that house. I didn't pack. I didn't look back. I drove until the sky brightened and my rearview mirror stopped showing shadows that moved wrong. I threw the camera into a river at dawn, watched it sink, watched the water swallow it. Then I kept driving. I expected nightmares, and they came every night.
My uncle calling my name. The creature crawling out of walls. The sound of film developing in the dark. But they were just dreams, not prophecies. Not anymore. Or so I thought. Until 1 week later, when a package arrived at my motel door. No return address, no postage. Just my name. I opened it slowly, hands trembling. Inside was a single Polaroid, still warm, still developing. The image spread across the square. My motel room, my bed, my body, sleeping. And in the doorway, the creature, backlit, tall as ever, waiting. At the bottom of the image, written in thin, jagged ink, was a single number: 3. The countdown wasn't over. It had just begun again. And this time, it wasn't the camera taking the pictures. It was something else. Something worse.